Welcome to part 2 of our Creative Effects video lesson. And in part 1 we looked at using colour curves to gently tweak mid-tone contrast. But colour curves can be used in a much more dramatic way to create a solarized still life like this. Solarization is basically an old darkroom technique that creates an inverse version of the image so that all the shadows become really bright and all the highlights become really dark. So it's like a negative version, but it's a little bit more selective and random than just inversing the image. So I'll show you how to use color curves to create a striking solarized effect, and that's a great way to introduce the contrasts and tones and shapes of the shot. So you can see the light shapes here coming through the blinds, you can see the lily standing out against the background, and we'll need to use lots of adjustment layers and masks to creatively solarize our still life, and then we'll finish off by adding a border. But let's kick off by opening part 2 before.jpg. If your layers palette's not visible, drag it from the panel bin or go to Window Layers to tick it and turn it on, and then copy this background layer by dragging it to the Create New Layer icon to create a duplicate layer. Then we'll pop up to Enhance, Adjust Color, and we're going to go down to Adjust Color Curves, and here you'll find the option to solarize the effect. You've got various subtle changes like increased midtones like we used in part 1, but if you go to solarize, watch what happens to this straight line here. The curve suddenly becomes much more distorted and you get very surreal colors and very distorted tones. Now, for a solarized image, you get a much more inverted U-curve, so you need this bit to come down. And to do that, if I go to mid-tone contrast and drag that to the right, you can see there that we've got a much higher curve, and it's dropping down at the bottom a little bit more as well. So that gives us really bright highlights here and really dark shadows to help bring out the contrast and the shapes and the forms of these amazing shadows coming through, like so. So when you've got something that looks like this curve here, you can click OK to apply the change. And once you've solarized your copied layer, you can click on it to select it and press Ctrl-I to inverse it to create a cool striking negative effect, and that really brings out the shape of the lily against the darker background. Now our shadows here are very dramatic, so we need to lighten these up a little bit just to help balance the lighting in the shot. To do that, target background copy by clicking, go to Enhance, go to Adjust Lighting this time and choose Shadows Highlights. And we can lighten up these dramatically dark shadows by popping lighten shadows all the way up to 100%, and that just gives us a much lighter background there now. But the lily is still standing out, as indeed are these amazing solarized shapes coming through the blinds. Let's just darken the highlights a little bit to around about 10, like so, and then click OK to apply the change. Now we can use adjustment layers to fine-tune our tones. Let me just drag the layers palette up a little bit to make some more space. Click here to add a new adjustment layer, and let's choose levels. And then up pops the adjustments palette. Let's just dock that to the bottom, and let's just push that up a little bit to make some more space. So we can continue balancing our lighting to bring out the shapes and forms in the picture. And what I'm going to do is drag this to the right just to darken some of those shadows. If we take that to around about 80, it might be darkening the shadows in this area here a little bit too much. We want to keep this lighter. So what I can do is go and choose this tool here, which is the gradient tool. Choose a nice foreground to background gradient from the gradient editor. Click OK. Make sure we've got a nice linear gradient. And then if I click on the mask to select it and have a black foreground color, if we click and drag, we protect this left section from being adjusted. You can see there we've got a nice mask from black through to grey to white. The white bits allow the area to be changed. The black protects that part of the layer from being adjusted. If I turn this on and off, you can see the adjustment is much more dramatic in this part of the shot, but it's not changing this area at all. Now, solarized images look fairly psychedelic in relation to their colors, and that can be a bit distracting. So what we're going to do is create a hue saturation adjustment layer, and we're going to take away those 70s psychedelic colors by dragging saturation down to -100, and that helps us focus more on the textures and the shapes and forms in the photo. By increasing the contrast in the shot, we can bring out more of these amazing shapes coming through the window, and I'm going to do that with another adjustment layer. So click here to add another levels adjustment layer. This time we're going to brighten up the highlights in the shot by dragging the highlight slider to the left to around about 219 or so, 218, and there you can see we've got more contrast here with these particular parts of the shot. Let me just turn that off. There's the before, there's the after. It just helps things jump out a little bit more effectively. So let me hit tab to get rid of the floating windows, and here's our amazing solarized effect. I've just popped the layers palette over to the left so you can see the blinds at the bottom of the section here, and they're being really blown out by the adjustment layer. So what I'm going to do is target the adjustment layers mask, grab a black brush, and then just gently spray over here to protect this area and just restore some of the details that were being blown out by that highlight adjustment. So let me just turn this on and off now. There's the before and there's the after, and there's a little bit down here as well we can restore, like so. So again, fine-tuning the masks helps to change the way the adjustment layer is changing the tones on the layer below. And this area here is being blown out a little bit by the levels adjustment that we just made. So what I'm going to do is click on the mask again, reduce the opacity to about 50% for a grey stroke, and if I just click and spray here, that just brings back some of the midtones that we lost when we made that highlight input level adjustment. So a subtle change, but it's well worth making just to fine tune the way that the lily is standing out from the background. So hit tab to get rid of the floating windows. All we need to do now is add a border. Now, as our shot is carefully composed, we don't want to eat into the edge of the frame with our border, so we need to increase the canvas size. To do that, go to Image, Resize, Canvas Size, and change this drop down here to percentage, and then we can type in a percentage value of 110 for the width and 110 for the height. Click OK, and that gives us some extra space around the image. If you press Z for the zoom tool and right click, you can choose Fit on Screen to see the shot. You can then grab the rectangular marquee tool and then just click and drag to draw around the edge of the frame. We're leaving a little bit of white inside the border like so. Then inverse that selection. And then what we're going to do is add a new layer by clicking here just to create a new layer to add the border to, and go to Edit, Fill Selection, set this to black, click OK, and there's our black border. Control D deselects the marquee and hit the tab key to get rid of the floating windows, and there is your solarized fine art piece. So that's the end of part 2 of our Creative Effects video lesson. In part 3 we're going to evoke a sense of speed by adding exciting zoom burst effects. So see you then.